Hello and welcome. I am Marya Kazmi, also known as Brown Girl Interrupting, your host of this show, Pain to Power. And this is the show where we turn our struggles into our strengths and we heal in community. So, I want to share a quote with you because today we are talking about unmasking the legal system. So, every system is perfectly designed to get the result that it gets. This quote is from W. Edwards Deming, and we often use it in schools to talk about our school systems and how the outcomes that we see aren't actually accidents, but the results of structures, policies, and beliefs that were shaped long before any of us arrived. The systems, right? And tonight, we're shifting that lens because we're not unmasking the education system, we're unmasking the legal system. But before we begin, I want to kind of zoom out a little bit and sit with a tough but necessary truth. So, when we're talking about inequities, biases, and oppression, we often focus on people, individual actions, individual harm, some of the things that are happening in isolation, but people don't exist in a vacuum. We operate within systems, and those systems carry out policies and have practices and structures that uphold and enforce rules that don't necessarily create, um, equity for everyone, and certainly are creating some oppression for others. So, and again, when we're talking about systems, it takes people to perpetuate those systems. So, in the framework of racism and oppression, we talk about four interconnected levels: internalized, interpersonal, institutional, and systemic. And those levels are not separate, they reinforce one another, and they function the way they do because individuals inside them actually move within them without questioning the rules or the power dynamics or the outcomes that aren't fair for everyone. So, all of this is why tonight's conversation is so important and so timely. My guest, Towanda Brown, the author of Empowering Pro Se Litigants, A Guide to Self-Representation, had to learn this reality firsthand. So, her journey through the legal system is not just about navigating a court case, it's about confronting the ways bias, discrimination, and systemic features shape the lives of ordinary people. And I'm really excited to welcome to the stage the author, um, Towanda Brown. So, welcome, Towanda.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
It is great to have you here and joining us today in this conversation. So, I know that for us, we connected, and I always kind of share like the story of how I get to my guests. You reached out to me, which was really exciting for me because you have such an amazing story and this book that you've written. And we have a common connection through the social dance exchange, which is pretty cool. And, I'm really grateful to have you on the show. And I always start with my guests asking them about just for you, how would you say you have experienced the idea of turning pain into power?
Oh, this book was really my healing because my experience took me through a journey. And I tell to people all the time that we often do not talk about the fact that sometimes we need a little bit of assistance. I actually had to go to a psychologist during my litigation with my former employer because the journey was so painful in terms of me having proof about things that they did to me. And when we would be involved in a discussion, they would just blatantly not tell the truth. So I went through a lot in terms of persevering, not quitting, to know that at the end of this, I was going to have my healing and I was going to be able to help other people. Because when I did it, I didn't see any other resources to assist me. So I did a crash course in being an attorney and it was hard. Sometimes being up 24 hours a day, preparing all the paperwork, and everything like that. So this really allowed me to see how strong I really am to be able to persevere based on what had been given to me and what I was able to do.
Well, I love that. And it is definitely a story of pain to power with all that you've done. And we're going to dig into the details of this journey for you. And I appreciate it because it sounds like for you, part of that power is in assisting others, in community and connection, in having someone to lift you up and guide you. And I'd love to actually, before we get into the book and the journey that you've had, there's a starting point, right? You know, we all start at younger ages, and something you shared with me that I want to elevate here is that your journey of having someone advocating for you and recognizing when the system doesn't work for you started actually in locally in Maryland in Prince George's County, right? In
Yes.
third grade. Tell me a little bit about like that first time of recognizing that you needed to be advocated for or that something wasn't actually meeting your needs in the systems.
Yes. So I started out in Atlanta, Maryland. I was at an all-black school initially, and then we had busing that took me to a school called Chapel Forge Elementary when I was in third grade. And there was a teacher, and I tell you, Mara, I can see his face just like it was yesterday. His name was Mr. Hunt, and he wanted to put me in special education because I spoke with a lisp.
Mm.
And my mom was a fierce advocate. She came and she argued and she fought and did not have me go in special education class. As a matter of fact, I then was placed in advanced classes because my mom didn't accept somebody saying that I had something going on with me just because they didn't like the way I spoke.
Mm.
And that was really the start of realizing that everybody that we see that is in a position of power or authority might not be looking out for our best interests. And so my mom was the first person that laid that foundation that says, hey, if you don't think it's right, then you go ahead and do something about it. But the important thing about this is I do a lot with the school system in Howard County.
Mhm.
I try and emphasize that when we do something to students, that can stay with them for a long time. I'm 61, and I remember what happened to me in third grade, just like it was yesterday.
Mm. Absolutely, right, and I think that goes back to the top of the show when I was talking about the idea of the levels of racism, right? That internalized stuff that sits with us, that impacts the way that we then show up, self-doubt sometimes that comes up. It sounds like, though, that your mom was a huge advocate, and that certainly has been a great role model in your life of continuing to advocate because you're doing that now in education, and you're clearly doing that also through your book and in talking about self-representation in the legal system. So let's get to the book a little bit. And I'd love to know what inspired you to get to this journey of realizing that before you even wrote the book, that you needed to be your own representation in the legal system.
Oh, there's been so many things that have happened with my life, with my boys' life. I have two boys. One is 37 and one is 26. Even when they were playing sports, my older son was very talented. They would pick him up on the team, no problem. I would see other boys who were not talented and they would get left on the sideline. So I knew that everybody needed somebody to advocate. They would even say to me, well, your son is doing fine. What's the problem? I said, it's not about my son because my son has me. It's about the boys that don't have a me.
Mm.
And that's what really started me to see that others don't necessarily have a voice or don't know how to use it. You know, we've been so trained to look out for everybody first, everybody else. How do they feel versus how do we feel? And that's what really started that. And not to mention, my mom was an EEOC officer for the federal government.
Mm.
So that had a strong foundation. My family, including my aunts and uncles, are very well versed educationally. And we just don't back down off of anything. That's when we have family dinners, we have heated conversations about various topics because everybody is opinionated based on what their belief is. And so one of the things that I learned is I need to help people know that they have a voice.
Mm.
And it's not always about sitting back and letting people do things to you that you don't feel right about. In this situation, In this book, I had worked for this company for over 7 years. I had grown the contract from one person to over 7 people. And what they tried to do during that time period was put a white male in with me, for me to teach him some of the things that I was doing. And I was like, no, no, I was here first. Don't you
Mhm.
think you should ask me first what I want to do instead of telling me what he wants to do? And so that led to him working underneath of me, but then I had to review his work, and I noticed that his work was subpar.
Mm.
So when I compared it against the quality management system of my former employer, I wrote an email saying that this was not in compliance. And they told me I was too aggressive. They told me all these things about how I was treating him. But even prior to that, because I am an advocate, I would get on committees that were going out to recruit students. And majority of the schools they were going to were not Black schools. So I joined in and I say, hey, what about Hampton? What about Morgan? What about Howard? And I was actually told by the HR director that the CEO has the ability to spend money however she wants to. And if I couldn't get in alignment, perhaps I should leave this group.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a pretty strong, clear message of what was going to be valued and what narrative wanted to be present, right?
Yes.
So what did that lead you then in your, because being such an advocate, being someone who's voicing for the those who don't have the voice, right? Like you're now coming across this experience in your own job that is shutting your voice down. How do you respond?
My response is not to be quiet, which did not go over very well. It was very hard for them to come against me because I was getting kudos for the things I was doing with the NAACP. A friend of mine is the president of NAACP. I know him very well, and so on the website they did an article of me being a community advocate, and so I was like, well, if I'm a community advocate and I see things going on with the company, isn't it my responsibility to try and make a difference? I got on HR committees, I got on many things, but anytime I try to say, hey, your website says we're equal opportunity, how come our numbers don't reflect that? Those kind of
Mm,
questions made people in management very angry with me, and they were finding any kind of way to nitpick at the things that I was doing, but at the same time, I was growing the contract. So, what are you going to do with me, right? The client loves me, and they're getting additional work because the client loves me, but I really am a pain in their neck. you know?
wow. But so, I mean, but it sounds like you're again coming across their discomfort of not really honestly living the truth that they say they're living on their website, right?
That
So,
is correct. Yep. And so what happens, what I notice is we know that they're not fulfilling what it is they signed up for. And we talk in subgroups. I had other people that I would talk with, and they would talk about their experience and how they got overlooked for a promotion. I said, so what? Did you say something? Well, no, because I need my job. And if I say something, I might not have it. But they said it was close. And next time I should be the one that gets the position. We just acquiesce instead of saying, no, no, show me why I did not get that position. Because it is possible when you challenge something that they do have to show you why this other person was chosen over you. And sometimes when they know that that's coming, they make different decisions. But if you just let it roll by the wayside, then they continue to do what they do. So it's a
mm,
matter of bucking the system, not in a disrespectful manner, but asking questions. I don't
mm,
understand. You know, I have more experience here than this person over here. Can you explain to me why they were chosen over me?
Well, and it sounds like there's so much this like self-awareness that has to go into this advocating for yourself that you were pushing for others to see and be willing to speak to. And I think that's a great connection to your shirt right now because there's a link, right? You say you have unchecked spirits get stronger, and it sounds like this is a big piece of that when it comes to self-awareness. Can you speak a little bit about to your, the phrase and what it means for you, and how that leads into some of the work that you started to do with this journey?
Yes. So, unchecked spirits get stronger is something that I learned throughout this journey, because when I tell you about the kind of things that come against you when you have fear, so fear is one of the things that holds us back. Unchecked spirits get stronger, and this logo that you see here about the warrior is about us having things within ourselves that we have to get under control before it's an opening for somebody else to come in and take advantage of it. And I'll give you an example. If you have fear that something's going to happen to you and somebody can sense that fear, they're going to come and attack you from that perspective because you're already showing a vulnerability. So what we have to first do is look at ourselves and say, okay, what is it about me that I need to look at that may be an opportunity for somebody to come in and take advantage, or for me to relinquish power? Anytime we let somebody do something to us, we really have turned over power to them to do it. So in order for us to block that, unchecked spirit gets stronger means setting boundaries. If somebody does something to me, it doesn't feel right, then I have a responsibility to say, hey, that didn't feel good to me. It doesn't mean you have to cut the people off, but it means that you have to recognize that that person may not have your best interests at heart. And in order for us to do that, there is a quote that I have in the book. It's an African proverb that says, when there is no enemy within, the enemy outside cannot hurt you. And what that says is, find out what's going on with you and find out what spirits you may have. You might have self-confidence, you may have doubt, you may have fear, you may have all these things that somebody looking to be a predator for you is going to eye out, because that's what they do. They look for weaknesses. And when you show that, then they're going to say, ha ha, I know how to infiltrate that person and get them to do what I want them to do. Bullying is real in the workplace. My book also maps you to the art of war, which is a battlefield strategy. And believe it or not, corporate America uses it all the time. So I knew that people really were not going to go read The Art of War separate than my book. So you'll see intertwined in there principles from The Art of War.
Well, I love that, and I love the origins in which the spirit of the book came from. Between the proverb itself and unchecked spirits get stronger, right? There's so much self work in there, and there's such alignment. And I share this with you already, right? In the course that I developed, all about Empowerment Unlocked, because really all that work does start with us examining and knowing ourselves, because we are stronger when we know ourselves and we have that foundation. We know how to show up, and we know what could be those weaknesses, which is so important. So let's get into though more of this journey, right? Because more happened after this. And actually, before we do, I just want to give a shout out to those of us who are in our chat. We have a lot of people joining us today. Thank you, Deanna2278. Good evening. Good evening, Kevin. Good evening, ladies. Thank you so much. And thank you. Please make sure, yes, that you like, subscribe, you share with a friend. You hit the bell down there so that you see all the episodes that come up. And thank you again for joining us. So now, Towanda, you see all these things. You know that we need to advocate better for ourselves. You're seeing the patterns and the trends coming up in this corporate environment. What's your next step to take it to the next level?
So one of the first things that we have to do is make sure we're not operating out of emotion. So we have a tendency to react, and that's exactly what they want us to do. We
Mm.
got to look at facts. What really happened? What didn't happen? What is opinion? What is things that really happened? So that's the first evaluation we have to do. And what I did is I have friends of mine and family members who tell me the truth. I'm going to present something to them. I'm going to ask their opinion. And whenever you ask for somebody's opinion, you got to be ready for the response.
Right.
And
Yes.
then based on that, I was like, okay, so here we go. One of the things I was taught, because my mom was an EEOC officer, you keep copies of everything. If anything has an inkling that it's not right, you have a copy of it.
Mm.
Other mentor told me if it isn't written, it never happened.
Mm.
When I tell you the number, I had documentation, and when they had to provide their copy of the documentation, because I requested it, they had cut some things out that had been in there before, but I had the full version of it. So make sure you have your paperwork to back up what it is that you're saying, including any reviews, including any comments of kudos from within your management chain. And then what typically happens is when they're ready to get rid of you, then those reviews start to change. And then you have to pay attention. Well, why is this different from last year?
Mm.
And why you never told me anything about it? Because then they're trying to build the trail in the paperwork. So I forgot to mention that my niece and my sister are HR directors. So I just happen to have a whole group of people that were very knowledgeable of
Mm.
how to deal with things that go on. So after I had those things in place, your other step that you have to make sure you do, and this is the one time I do recommend that people have an attorney, is you have to get through the EEOC case from the perspective of a right to sue letter.
Mm-hmm.
If you do not get a right to sue letter, then the employer is going to think that they won. So you got three choices: no cause, which means EEOC says we didn't find anything, dismissed. You have a yes, they are guilty, and the EEOC will take over and do the case for you. Or you have a right to sue letter where the EEOC says, I think something may have happened here. I can't prove it and don't have the time to, but I'm saying you have the right to pursue it.
Okay.
After you get that right to sue letter, that's when you move into the next phase for taking them to court as a pro se litigant.
Right. I love that. And it sounds like these, again, are all the steps. So go get the book because these are all outlined in the book itself. And yes, I see Phil de Montaigne says, this is awesome. Definitely. Greetings from Deanna Toomer. Congratulations on your book, Towanda. Love it. Thank you for joining us. Sheila Marshall. Good evening, ladies. Good evening, Sheila. I love it. And Z Amanu Khan News. Thank you for joining us, and peace. It is so good to have everyone here. We have some of our iRant network. We have some of our social dance exchange folks. I see a range of folks here in the chat joining us. Please make sure that if you have a question, we can add those in. Let's make this an interactive conversation. Sheila says, Towanda, this information and feedback should be heard and read by young professionals entering the work world for the first time. Absolutely, right? There's so many gems and so much good information in mapping all of this out. So it sounds like on the front of this, as we're listening, that you had documentation, you had connections of individuals who knew the system. So of course you went to court and it all worked out.
Ha ha.
More. What happened? So, because in many times we think, right? Well, we've done everything, right? We got the words, we've got the written words, we've got the information, we know the system. It's gonna work.
Oh my goodness. When I tell you that I was so hurt when I started this legal process, because you think justice, if you're right, justice is going to come over on your side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not at all. They tried to, so this was in 2020. They strung it out until 2023. So imagine if I had an attorney that I was paying, I would have been paying for 3 years before we went to mitigation. Then they tried to dismiss the case twice. First time they said it was no grounds for it. And the judge was like, I don't agree with you. The second time they gave me a backhanded compliment, which said, what she is writing is too good for her to have done it by herself. And you know how you see on some of the court shows, they have somebody over there looking at the way you behave and personality to see if you're lying. They had that in that courtroom. And so I was like, I think you're missing my background. I do a lot in terms of looking at congressional paperwork, comparing it. I mean, that's my background. I'm an analyst. That's what I do. And I think that the fact that I was so thorough in what I was doing was shocking to them, that they thought I had an attorney. And if you represent yourself as a pro se litigant and they find out you had an attorney, then that's against the law because you're defrauding the court. So I got power after each and every one of those, because what I started doing is turn myself from being on the defensive to being on the offensive. I started coming after them and having them on the ropes instead of the other way around. So it was, they would say blatant untruths. When I say I have a memo that I put in the package to them, because we have to send documents to them, and they respond to a statement saying the opposite of what the written paperwork says. And I would go to the state's attorney. I said, this is perjury. How? Go lock them up. I mean, and they said, do you know how many people commit perjury? We do not have time to go and lock up people that commit this little bit of perjury, because it happens all the time.
So it's accepted.
Oh,
so it's accepted, right? Like that's,
it's accepted. And you see on the front of the book, I have the weights, right, of justice, because it's supposed to be balanced. It is not balanced. I was totally disenfranchised. After my first interrogatories, I went to one of my friends that's in the book, and he said to me, T, you are gray. All of the blood had drained out of my face, because I could not believe that somebody could sit in front of you and just lie in your face.
That is a real jarring thing, right? So I want to pause your story. I know there's so much more to it, but I want to pause it because I really want to ask you, those are hard things. I can't imagine. Those are late nights. You're working at the same time as doing all this, right? So you've literally taken on a second full-time job of being your own representative. What did that feel like, just to every day getting through it? How did you move through that in a personal way?
It was hard. Thank goodness I wasn't dating anybody at the time. Because that would have been horrible. I had to have a face because my youngest son still lives here. So I had to do for my youngest son. He was in college. And that we have to make sure that our kids are okay. And so many times, Marya, I cried. I just could not believe what I was going through, because I was right. I had everything that said I was right. How could this not be cut and dry? And they see that they're wrong, but they were going to try and tarnish who I was as a person, even though I had all those other things that talked about accomplishments I did at the job, NAACP, community advocacy, all of those things that said I was a good person. They try and destroy you and cut you to pieces. That's that unchecked spirits get stronger. That's when I learned about it. I had to say, wait a minute. This is spiritual warfare right here. And so I had to go gird myself up. Like I said, I had a psychologist. I had my friends. And the other thing that's really hard is when your family and friends, those that love you, see you going through this, They want to tell you, stop, it's not worth it. I don't want
Mhm.
to see you hurting anymore. But they don't understand at the same time, if you don't see this through, you're going to have to live with it for the rest of your life, that you never fought for what you believe you were done wrong.
So is that what kept you motivated to keep pushing forward even though it was so painful, it was taking so much from you?
It did. And it was for my kids as well, because I have always taught my kids not to fear anything. My family, my nieces, my great nieces, my nephews, because fear is the thing that paralyzes us. And
Mm.
I knew that if I did not set an example about what was happening, that it was not going to be held properly. So I dealt with it. I followed it all the way through. Nobody in my family knew what I was going through. My sons knew a little bit, but they did not know everything that I was going through. I kept it a lot to myself. You can't even really tell your family and friends. They're going to say, well, why are you doing this? Just stop. Just stop.
Right.
And in the book, you'll see a roadmap that I have, and it says at any time you can exit off of the roadmap. If you
Mm.
start out and you talk to the employer, and the employer says, oh, we agree with you, we're going to give you this, that may be good enough for you because they're admitting wrongdoing, and you move on and you get off the exit ramp. Or that might not happen and you go a little bit further and you say, okay, this is good enough, I'm gonna get off. Or you go all the way to the end. The important thing is, it's your journey for you to make a decision about what's best for you. And there's no wrong answer.
Mm. I appreciate that because I think that it took a lot, obviously, out of you, for you, but you also had a lot of background that helped support you through this, and you talk about the knowledge you had through systems of knowing people who understood things, right? But I think that it's important to recognize that just because you can't go through the full process does not mean you're not still winning in some way, right? Like, and to give everybody that grace for themselves is important. So I really do appreciate that you said that. And you talk about the disenfranchisement, and really it sounds like this discrediting
Oh,
of you, right? Like that was a big part of the system. But are there other pieces that you recognize and biases and barriers within the system legally that you notice that you advocate for or talk about when it comes particularly to marginalized communities and to people of color and individuals who have less voice oftentimes in the legal system?
oh, absolutely. First of all, they think we're not intelligent enough to know what to do
Mm.
and not have the resources. That's number one. Number two, they think we're emotional and can't be based off of the facts. So they pick at us for us to respond based on anger instead of facts. That's the other thing they do. And the other thing they think they can do is bully us because we have acquiesced for so long to follow what
Mm.
it is they tell us to do. And when you actually buck against it, they don't say you're standing your ground. They say you're being aggressive. They say you're being, rude. They're saying you're not following what is supposed to happen, because you're just supposed to sit back and yes, yes, sir, and kind of thing. And so they try very hard to get you off of your game so they can say, see, I told you that they don't know what they're talking about, that they're emotional, that this really had nothing to do with what we did, but they're responding to emotion. So all the stereotypes that they try and make for us, it's so important that we don't do any of them. And
Mhm.
so at the beginning of the book, I talk about how my son and I first wanted to call this taking them to the mattresses. It's from an Italian mafia, right? I don't
Mhm.
know if you know anything about mafia movies, but the Godfather used to talk about it. You hurt my family, I hurt your family, kind of thing. But we had to say, but that's not the right approach because that's exactly what they're expecting. You got to do the opposite.
Mm.
And that's how I was able to keep my composure. When I tell you that we will go into these conference rooms and there would be 5 people on one side of the table and only me on the other side of the table.
Hmm.
That's the kind of intimidation. That's the
What
kind of
intimidation.
oh, everything you could think that somebody will do in the book, they tried to do very early on to get me to back off. And at that point, they had made me totally mad of you're not telling the truth. You're trying to attack my character in front of the judge, and I don't care if I lose. We going I'm not going to let you do this to me because I have to live with that, and we're going to take this all the way. So again, I started getting off the ropes and putting them on the ropes.
Mm. And so what was the shift when that happened? What did you notice when you started to kind of turn that around?
Oh, so when they had to respond to some of my questions, they were starting to make mistakes because they were never used to being in a situation where somebody was asking them questions. But the questions at that time that I started asking, I already knew the answer for because I had documentation that said what the answers for. So they started getting a little sloppy. The person who was the lead attorney, when we were doing interrogatories and I was asking questions, I had gotten so close to the HR director admitting what she had done. He called a break, took her out in the room. Next time she came in and we started asking questions, I started asking questions. She said, I don't recall. I don't remember. At which time I said, oh, the legal system says you cannot do this.
Mm.
And so that attorney that was the lead attorney, it got shifted to another person. And so he then went into the background. So they were a little bit off balance and frantic because they were not used to being in this situation. The CEO, for the very first time, was pulled into an interrogatory situation.
So I am new to the legal system a little bit in lingo, and I know pro se litigant was new for me. But tell us can you break down interrogatories, what they are, what's happening during interrogatories, so that we all have a context of what we're talking about here?
Sure. So, pro se litigant is when you represent yourself in court without an attorney. So, you have the right to do everything that an attorney can do. So, you have a right to request particular papers that you may have that will support your case. So, I had the ability to write down, I want this and these things and this conversation. But then you have a limit to what you can use after you get the deposition and they provide you what they're supposed to provide you with, which they do not do. They gave me copies of the same thing over and over again, by the way, a stack like this that I had to go through.
Mm.
Interrogatories is after the deposition and you get all the paperwork that you requested, you get to do interviews. Just like you see in court, you
Okay.
get to ask them questions. You get to say, I want these people to be on the list for us to schedule an interview with. And I was able to be the attorney and ask them questions.
I love that. So in your book, do you give some guidance in how to address interrogatories and what that might look like?
Yes, I do. I walk through every step of the equation because I had to do it myself. So I don't want
Mm.
anybody to have to do anything from scratch. You can start from my book and it will tell you what to do. Not only does it tell you what to do, when you have that attorney to help get you through the EEOC process, I tell you, ask these questions when you have the attorney so that you're ready for when you're representing yourself and you have the answers. So it is so important that you read the information because I even give you a checklist and said, did you get these main things from this chapter? If you didn't get that, you need to go back and read it because these are things you need to go to the next step.
I love that because then we know what we need for each piece of the puzzle to really make sure that we are on top of the game of what information, what data, what research, but also what's the system doing, right? And how do you navigate the system, which again is so incredibly powerful because so often and you've mentioned it, right? Like it's purposefully convoluted, it's purposely confusing, it's purposely difficult to register information, to find information, to get the right forms, right? All of it is very intentional. The system is designed the way it is, right? For
Yeah.
the results.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, again, you've definitely done a lot of stuff. And I love it. You said we call that the jackpot. Yeah. Right? Right. But and this book is definitely going to give us some more guidance. You can always appeal the case to a higher court, right? And that, though, again, still is going to be another process in itself, and you need to know what you're going to be doing within that. So when you're thinking about all of this and people getting into representing themselves, right? What are some of the starting places that you feel like you would recommend if someone is in a space right now where they are going through a legal battle, where they're dealing with something? How do they begin to consider being pro se litigants for themselves?
So what I would say, one of the first things you want to do is look at existing cases. So I give you references in the book that says, look at some of the people that have done pro se litigant for, it depends what you're saying. Let's say discrimination, based on the kind of discrimination that you think is occurring. And then you see the kind of situations that they're writing about in their existing court cases. Everything is public record. So what people don't realize, mine was in federal court, by the way. I did not do local. Mine was in federal court.
Huh?
You can go and find cases on the case search, and I give you all kind of links and say, okay, this sounds similar to what happened to me, and this is what they did to be able to win that. The other thing you want to do, I probably talked to about 4 or 5 attorneys, and let me tell you, one attorney, he said to me, well, when you basically called your employer a liar, what did you think they were going to do? I said, I called them being untruthful about what it is that they did to me. And I have the right to do that.
That's
But he tried to even discourage me, saying it was my fault for standing up for myself. So
this was an attorney who was supposed to be representing you?
with an attorney I was doing through the interview process. I interviewed probably 4 attorneys because you can get references from different places for attorneys. And this person actually knew the attorney on the other side for the employer. And that's the other thing that I realized that I didn't know is the relationship that they have. It's like being in a boxing match. Yep, we're in court and we're battling defense and prosecutor, but afterwards we can go have dinner and say, yep, you got me on that one. I mean, it was so wow.
Wow.
We think a lot of times that people that are in authority or somebody that has a law degree, they're supposed to take this oath that represents the client. And I can tell you, I felt so like underrepresented when it came to my mediation, because the magistrate says, hey, you're pro se litigant. What if I get you a pro bono person to help you understand the mediation? I was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. That would be so helpful. Little did I know, she did not give me great advice. Actually, early in the process, I said, this is over. Y'all are wasting my time. I don't want her here. I want to fire her.
And how did you know? How did you know that he was not actually advocating for the benefit of you?
Because the employer was making a recommendation and she would say, I think that's a good deal. I was like, no, it is not a good deal. You know? Do you know everything that they did to me? You know? Oh my gosh. It was, I think after that day, I was like, the worst thing I probably did was rest when I knew I had a pro bono attorney for the mediation. as diligent as I was through the rest of the process, I should have been diligent on that and did my own
Mm,
research. But I was so tired that I thought, finally, I have someone that can legally help me out, because they wouldn't let me have anybody the entire time.
right.
And the one time I let my guard down, it
Mm.
it it hurt me.
But isn't that how power over people works? We
Ah,
exhaust them until then they feel like they have nothing left to fight with, and then we're able to control, right? That definitely is something that comes up. Janine Carter, Lasting Touches LLC, says, Towanda, were you pleased and satisfied with the final outcome? Thank you, Janine. That's where we were gonna go anyway. So yes. So tell us what all this led to, what final outcome for you?
so we ended up having a settlement. Was I pleased with it? No, because after the fact, I found out that some things that I agreed to, I didn't have to agree to. But my pro
Mm.
bono attorney never told me that. But what I am happy with is that we were able to move forward. I was able to move forward. And I was able to write this book with restrictions, of course, that allowed me to get everything that was in me out and say, when you all do this, take what it is that I've done. Instead of stepping on the same landmines that I stepped on, I'm going to help you not step on it this time. And so,
Mm.
from that perspective, I think that I went through it to help other people not go through what I went through. So,
Mm.
from that perspective, I will say that what was supposed to happen happened.
Mm. That's so true, right? Is that sometimes the pain is part of that journey that needs to happen for us. And it sounds as though it's really for the mission that you
Yeah.
have in front of you, right? You have a purpose to help educate others and not have them go through the same experience you did, because they have the community of you, they have this structure, they have these tools, which makes a huge difference. And I mean, you talked about this being, and Deborah, yes, 6228 says, great information. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to all the people in the chat joining us and asking great questions and engaging with us. Please make sure you subscribe, you like, you comment, leave a comment for certain. If you're even watching this rebroadcast, make sure you're leaving a comment. What's resonating with you? How might you take this information for you? But Tawanda, you talked about at the beginning that this has been your healing process. Now, at the end of all of this, as you're talking through this, what what has that experience of walking through all of this, what have you learned about yourself that you didn't know before you started this journey?
I think I've learned that I'm an encourager. um, I do a lot for people. I'm a chair of an organization that does a lot of advocacy work, but I think I am realizing that I can help people maneuver themselves instead of me doing it on their behalf. And
Mm,
so, even if I were to do this book again, I probably would call it something different, because it's about more than being a pro se litigant. It's about your own journey of resistance and perseverance, and knowing who you are as a person, and not letting someone take you off of your journey that you're intended for. So I think it taught me that I knew I was strong, because I come from a very strong family. But it taught me that what other people are going through, sometimes we dismiss it. You hear people all the time saying that they are a victim, and sometimes they really think they are, because they don't know what power they really have. And I think
mm,
my responsibility that I'm taking on myself is people to understand the power that they really have within themselves once they find out who they are.
oh,
Like,
so
let's find out who we are and what we have inside of us, so
yes.
we're able to combat other things that might be put in us when we were childhood. We might have had a fear of something. I gave an example of my younger son. He was in swimming lessons, and they make you jump in the deep end of the pool. He didn't want to jump in the deep end of the pool, crying. His father saying, "Don't make him do it. He don't want to do it." My son today is a certified lifeguard.
Because he was empowered
That's
to
right.
take the step, right? And that's sometimes it, right? We have to give people permission, and we have to give ourselves permission, right? Like, and I love it because you talk about building people's capacity and moving them to empowerment and self-empowerment. And that is so important. And this is all about the legal system itself, but it sounds like it's also about just individual understanding and growth and knowing that you have that power within yourself. And I'm going to say, also, in addition, I have a course that is called Empowerment Unlocked that starts in January. Please make sure you come and join me because it is all about this journey that is, how do we find those patterns? How do we understand those root causes? And what do we start to do to transform and change them? So you've got structures and processes and really looking at the legal system. And then you've got some courses with me. Please come and join both of us. Make sure you're getting the book. And I know we saw it before, but I just want to elevate it. Your shirt is
Yes.
this swag. It looks like that's on your website, which is linked below as well for everybody.
Yes.
Is that so we can get a lot of different swag about unchained spirits are stronger.
Yeah. Unchecked spirits get
Unchecked
stronger.
spirits get stronger. Thank you. I love that. Unchecked spirits get stronger. So make sure you go and get the book. Make sure you go and check out some of this merch. Follow Towanda. Towanda, how else do people continue to follow you? What should we be looking out for as we are continuing to learn more about all the great things you're doing?
I'm going to update itsmyjourney.net is my website right now. I have to do some other things like on social media. I'm actually going to reach out to our mutual friend to help me, like she helped you, to be able to do some of those same things. So that's what's going to be happening. At my book signing, I mentioned that people have asked me about doing a book about online dating. And
Okay.
my girlfriend joked about, "Oh, that's going to be a comedy." I was like, "Yeah, that's going to be very different than this book."
Very different, but a whole nother system to navigate. So yes.
Exactly.
And there are all kinds of mindset shifts and behaviors and things. So, and I appreciate though all the tools that you provided. And it sounds like just going back into thinking of the top of this conversation, right? When we're talking about this idea of systems and how systems exist because people are perpetuating them, but also through your story, what we recognize is that individuals can disrupt those systems too, right? That we don't have to accept things as they are for face value. And the more we know, the more we understand, the more that we're able to examine the things around us with critical eyes, with looking into the tools that are going to help us to do that, we are able to have the power to take back our stories, to take back the things that are happening. And I love that, Twana, because you shared so much of that with us today. And I see the chat is blowing up. So let's honor some of these friends in here. Deborah Hayes says, great information. Thank you so much. And Zirmanicon News says the lawyers stay in the pocket of the state. Absolutely, right? There is definitely so much intertwined interconnectedness. And it's not really about people, it sounds like. It's a business. Everything often is, right? And those businesses function on us not knowing, on
Exactly.
keeping things mysterious, keeping things confusing. And so the more we know, the more empowered we are. Make sure you go get the book so you know more. Make sure you join me in my courses so you know more. And Judith Jones, 5716 says, thank you for your information and support. Thank you so much. And to all of my new friends joining me who I haven't seen before, please make sure you subscribe to this channel. I am Marya Kazmi. This is Brown Girl Interrupting. And this Pain to Power is on every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, talking about all these different journeys. And I have my courses. There's so much more coming from here. So please make sure that you subscribe, you like, you comment, you share a comment, and you share this with someone. So thanks again. There's so much more in the chat. I want to come back to the chat. I know there were some more folks in here. Thank you for your information and support. Thank you, Judith Jones. And thank you, Towanda. Congratulations, ladies. The people needed to hear about her journey, the truth behind resistance. Absolutely. Thank you so much for tuning in, our iRant family. Thanks, Kevin. This is part of my Substack family. I really enjoyed your story and admire your perseverance. Yes, Kevin, Towanda is doing some amazing things. Thank you so much. Thomas Mosley says, a story of self-empowerment. I love it. Thank you, Thomas, for joining us. Oh, this is awesome. Congratulations, ladies. Great podcast. Towanda, continue to be you. Absolutely. You are inspiring so many people. And before we finish up, thank you, Tracy. Great session, Towanda and Marya. Well, thank you, Tracy, for joining us. Love the self-empowerment and perseverance. Absolutely, Janine. So, well, you have so many followers and so many people, but I got to ask, because before the top of the show, there has been some real impact from your book already. I would love for you to share that story with us before we head out tonight.
Absolutely. So, one of the things is this book is not only about the legal system, but about us advocating for ourselves. So, I have a friend of mine whose daughter went to buy a car. She was trying to express her independence. She bought it from a dealer in DC, and the dealer brought it over to Maryland to deliver it to her.
Mm-hmm.
On the bill of sale, it said as is. Okay. And so, of course, she wants to be a grown person, goes ahead and buys a car. The dealer doesn't even give her temporary tags to drive the car. Okay. So we already know that's illegal.
Mm-hmm.
She takes the car for an inspection. It is not even safe to drive. Failed inspection on so many levels. And so I talked to my friend, and she says, there's nothing we can do about it. Say as is. I said, oh, yes, you can do something about it. State of Maryland has a lemon law. The dealership is in DC. They have laws in place. So she did what I had suggested, that to have everybody to do, reach out to the person you have the conflict with, try and work it out. And she was like, hey, get these things fixed for my daughter's car. She's driving in an unsafe car. You know, the steering was broken, all these things. She could have an accident. He's like, nope, I'm not going to do it. It says as is. I said, well, you do know as is, it says that they have to itemize what's wrong with it, right? He said, well, go ahead and take me to court. That's going to take a long time.
Oh, ooh.
So I said, well, here you go.
Here's the book.
Here's resources. I want you to contact this person, DC government. Want you to contact this person, Prince George's County, state of Maryland. I got a call from her. She got in touch with DC. They contacted the dealer. Everything got fixed on her daughter's car. The reinspection was paid for. And I said, so many times we think that what somebody tells us is the truth. They expect us just to acquiesce to what they say and not question it. She questioned it, protected her daughter from driving a car that was unsafe. The brakes, the power steering, the chassis, all of it was damaged. And so I said, oh my goodness, I'm already making a difference in saying, don't just accept what somebody tells you, but go a step further if it doesn't feel right to you. And so I was so happy. I was like, yay.
Well, I love it. That is definitely cause for celebration. I see your balloons in the back from your book signing that just happened this week. So congratulations. Congratulations on the book. Congratulations on the impact that you are making, because I can see already in the chat, it's obviously from your story, right, that people are feeling this knowledge as so purposeful for them to be able to move forward and to start questioning these systems, question the people that are telling them things that are not accurate nor helping and supporting them, right? So keep questioning, keep looking through those systems, because those systems are designed for the results that they get. So friends, continue to be critical, continue to be conscious, continue to be aware. Make sure you follow Towanda. Make sure you're following me. Join me this January for classes on Empowerment Unlocked to go even deeper in your examination of self and healing. And make sure you're following both of us. And of course, subscribe, like, comment, hit the bell, and tune in every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for more episodes of Pain to Power. Thank you to my amazing producer, Mr. Dialogic, and to Towanda for a wonderful conversation and the opportunity and honor to be your second official interview on the book. I feel very honored to be a part of that. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
This was a pleasure. Peace, love, and light, friends.